and welcome back to Cooking with Suzanne. So today we're going to prepare a stew, a chicken stew with lots of vegetables. As you can see, I've been busy getting all of my mise en place ready. So we have onions and carrots, celery, red peppers, tomatoes, mushrooms, potatoes, peas, and spinach. So it's a really nice vegetable stew that we will add a little protein to, and we'll use chicken today. So it's more about the vegetables and less about the protein. So let's get started. The first thing we have here is one sweet onion. Vidalia onions are in season right now, so this is a Vidalia onion. It ends up being about 2 cups. And I have some olive oil in my pot back here. So I'm just going to raise the heat and add the onions to the pot. Just give that a little bit of a stir. And we'll talk about our other ingredients. The next 2 ingredients that are going to go in are our carrots. And this is about 4 cups of carrots, and as you can see, I slice them on the diagonal, on the bias. You don't have to cut them this way, you can just cut them straight across. And I did the same thing with the celery. Let me throw the carrots in and then we can talk about the celery. Give that a stir. I like not to take all the vegetables and dump them in all at once, because what will happen is my pan will cool down too quickly. So I give it a chance to catch up before I take another vegetable and put it in the pot. I will go ahead and put in the celery. This is about 1.5 cups. It's not quite 2 cups, about 1.5 cups. I use 3 nice large celery stalks here. So let's throw this in. Celery actually has a great flavor. I think it's actually underused. It has a wonderful flavor. Another vegetable that you could use, especially more closer to the fall time, would be fennel. You could replace the celery with fennel. And I have a red pepper here, which is just diced, 1 red pepper, and it's almost about the same amount as the celery, about 1.5 cups. So 1 large red pepper is going to go in. And then what we want to do, since we do want to sweat the vegetables, is take about a teaspoon of kosher salt and season all of our vegetables. Okay. That's a 1/2 teaspoon and another 1/2. We'll let that sweat for about 10 minutes. Once everything is going pretty well, I can go ahead and lower the heat, but I'm not ready to lower it yet. Let's give it a couple of more minutes. I'm afraid if I lower it too quickly and all the water starts releasing out of the vegetables, it'll basically stop cooking. We don't want that to happen. And if you can actually hear it behind me, it really did kind of settle down and it got a little quieter, and that's because of all the vegetables that are in there. So let's wait until it can catch up before we turn it down. I have about 3 cloves of garlic here, and I just minced it, so that will go in closer to the end of the 10 minutes. I like to make sure that this doesn't brown at all. Not that these vegetables are browning either, but I'll add this close to the end. And another, I do like to use a little bit of chili flakes. I'm starting to realize with every recipe that I'm sharing with you, I seem to always be using chili flakes. It almost seems as though I'm obsessed with it, and I'm really not, but somehow most of my recipes seem to have this in there. So I'm just going to put in about 1/2 teaspoon. We'll just put that in over the top. And I do like to put bay leaves into my stews. Even with beef stew, I do the same thing. So I'm going to throw in a bay leaf here. It's starting to pick up, which means that the heat is back where we want it. So this is probably a really good time to turn the heat down. But you want to make sure the vegetables are still cooking and sweating, which is nice. One other ingredient in our stew, I like mushrooms. I like it in beef stew also. So this is 8 ounces, 1 package of cremini mushrooms that I just sliced. I don't like to put this in with the vegetables. There's a lot of water in mushrooms, and I think to get maximum flavor, you really do need to sear the mushrooms so they can caramelize a little bit before we go ahead and add it to our stew. So I have a saute pan right here. I'm going to raise the heat. And by the way, in this pan, before I added the onions, I did put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in this. And in this saute pan, I just have a little bit of canola oil or grapeseed oil that I'm going to sear my mushrooms. But I need to make sure my pan is really nice and hot before I go ahead and put in the mushrooms. One other ingredient are tomatoes. These are just canned, diced tomatoes. You can use a small can, a 14-ounce can of tomatoes. You can actually get them already diced. Otherwise, just get a small can of plum tomatoes and dice them yourself. So I think it's hot enough to go ahead and add our mushrooms. There we go. And because we do want to caramelize them, we don't want to season them yet. You want to wait and let them start to caramelize first. And it's nice to put a little bit of butter for flavor for the mushrooms. I have a little bit of unsalted butter here. And you just take little pieces of butter and go down around the edge of your pan. Don't move your mushrooms. There we go. Maybe one more tiny little piece. So you want to get some nice color on the mushrooms, and you don't want to move them. If you start to move them around, the water will start to extract from the mushrooms, and then you'll never get any caramelization. So let's wait on that. Let's take a look at our vegetables. They look great. I think I can add our garlic. I think it's safe to add our garlic here. And let's talk about wine. I love to put wine in my stew, and I'm going to use this Riesling, 1 cup of wine. This is Wagner's. And I just want to tell you, I think you can see the color looks a little funky here. After I seared my chicken breast, I have 4 chicken breasts here. If I would have used chicken thighs, boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any. So for this recipe, you would either use 4 chicken breasts or 8 chicken thighs. And all you want to do is just take your chicken and brown it on both sides. It is not fully cooked. You do not want it to be fully cooked. You just want to sear it in a hot pan with a little bit of grapeseed oil. And after the chicken breast comes out, there's all these little bits from the meat. And I took my 1 cup of white wine and I put it into the saute pan. And I scraped it with, this is the saute pan that I used for the chicken breast. And I just take a wooden spoon, add the white wine, the pan is still nice and hot, and just take a wooden spoon and you just scrape all that fond off of the bottom of the pan. And all that flavor now is in our wine, which is going to go into the stew. So let's take a look at the mushrooms. So what I'd like to do is take my white wine and I'm going to put it in with my vegetables. And you want to let this reduce by 50%. I'll turn this up to high. I think our mushrooms are very close to being done. Now you can season your mushrooms with a little bit of kosher salt. So in essence, you see that we're layering the stew. We're layering all the vegetables, but we're taking our time with getting all these flavors together and bringing them all together. These mushrooms look great. They're done. I'm just going to put them aside. And this looks wonderful. Our next ingredient that's going to go in is our tablespoon of fresh thyme. So I'll sprinkle the thyme in. And this came from our garden. It's beautiful. All the herbs are just beautiful right now already. And here's our chicken. So you just want to cube it up, and you would do the same with the chicken thighs. And just cube up your meat. And as I said, you don't want your meat fully cooked. You want to sear the meat for about 2 to 3 minutes, a good 3 minutes on both sides, so that you get a nice caramelization, because that's going to add flavor to our stew. Okay? And we can go ahead and add our tomatoes. The tomatoes also really do need salt. So I'm just going to grab and put in about a half a teaspoon of salt to the tomatoes. And just give that a stir. And you can let this cook for a couple of minutes just to bring all the flavors together before we go ahead and add our stock. Here are our mushrooms, which I will just add to our chicken. That's going to go into our pot, mushrooms and chicken, and then our stock. Once the chicken stock comes to a boil, you want to lower the heat and let it simmer for a good 10 minutes. All right, this looks great. All right, let's go ahead and put our chicken and our mushrooms into the stew. And then we will add our stock. So I have potatoes here. Yukon Gold potatoes are a great choice. This was about 4 large potatoes, ends up being about a quart. And I do have it sitting in cold water so the potatoes don't turn brown on us. All right, so this is nice and loud. Everything is at the right temperature. So let's go ahead and put in some stock. Now, once that comes to a boil, we will lower it and let it cook for about 10 minutes. We want our broth to be more of a sauce in the stew. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can either make a slurry with cornstarch or potato starch or arrowroot. You can use any of those to make a nice slurry. And once your broth is boiling, you then just stir in the slurry until you get to the consistency that you're looking for. And all you do, I would start with a couple of tablespoons, and you just thin it out with a little bit of water, or you could use cold chicken broth and just add some water to this, and we will use this to thicken our broth. Okay, so we let our chicken simmer for about 10 minutes, and now we're going to add our diced potatoes. If you notice, they're fairly large cubes. You want this to be fairly big, and so we will add this to our stew, bring it to a boil, lower it again to a simmer, and we'll let this cook for about 15 minutes. Raise the heat to high and add our potatoes. And it's backed and it's all nicely covered. So your 8 cups of broth should be perfect for the amount of ingredients that we used here today. And we'll partially cover it again and bring it to a simmer and let that go for about 15 minutes. I think our potatoes are fully cooked, and for me the best way to check that is just to pull one out of the stew And once again, use the skewer and just go straight through. And if it's nice and tender, then you know you're ready to go, which it is. So let's just finish with our final ingredients, which is our peas. This is a good time to remove your bay leaf before you go ahead and thicken and add the spinach, which might be a little more difficult to find. So remove the bay leaf. Let's throw in our spinach in. And now you just want to let this cook for about 5 minutes before we thicken our broth. We will add some of our slurry to the stew. Just add it, you know, a little bit at a time so you can actually watch it thicken. Oh, there we go. Okay. We are definitely there. I'm going to lower this now. And even with cornstarch, you do want to let it cook for a couple of minutes. Let's bring the stew over. Parsley in here. You can save some for on top for garnishing. Hopefully you can see our beautiful looking stew. Beautiful. Nice combination. So when you ladle it in, just make sure you get a little bit of everything in your bowl. The only other thing you might want to do, if you have a little bit of fleur de sel, you can sprinkle a little fleur de sel over the top. There is our beautiful stew. It looks great. Okay, so I'll come around so you can get a better view of it. There you go. Great. And we will be back shortly to talk about wine to go with this delicious stew. So we have a very cool, rainy night tonight, perfect for this wonderful chicken stew, and I think you have a really nice wine to go with it. Do you want to tell everybody about it?
I certainly would. What's my name?
Bob.
What's my job?
Wine director.
Thank you very much. Okay. So the wine I chose is a wonderful wine from the Finger Lakes called Ryan William. Beautiful label, 2012 Pinot Noir. If you watched a few videos, 2012, great year for the Finger Lake Reds. Ryan William on the east side of Seneca Lake, quality winery. And this Pinot is, I would say, medium to full bodied. It'll stand up to the mushroom and the complexity of this stew. It's you can drink this wine with literally anything. It is wonderful. It's a great Pinot, and it has substance.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say about it. I want to add one more thing to this, this food and wine pairing. What do you need besides food and wine? I'm going to tell you what you need besides food and wine. You need to go outside on a rainy day with an umbrella, and you need to pick your bride some tulips, okay? 7 tulips to be exact.
They're beautiful.
Lucky 7, there you go.
They're actually the color of the wine.
Well,
this is
like
crazy.
I coordinated that, right? But great, great wine, great tulips.
Yeah.
Great partner.
Great. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. See you next time.
You don't bring me flowers.
What a lovely surprise.
Anymore.
Perfect.